Tax brackets. They're one of those things that sound complicated, but once you understand how they work, they're actually pretty straightforward. The problem is, there are a lot of myths floating around that make people anxious about earning more money or confused about how much they actually owe. So let's break down the most common misconceptions and clear this up once and for all. If I get a raise and move into a higher tax bracket, I'll take home less money. This simply isn't true, and it comes from a fundamental misunderstanding of how tax brackets work. The U.S. and most countries of the world use a progressive tax system. What that means is your income is divided into chunks, and each chunk is taxed at a different rate. You don't pay one flat rate on everything you earn. Here's an example. Let's say you're single and you make $100,000 in 2024. You don't pay 22% on the entire $100,000. If deductions is $15,000 and your taxable income is $85,000, the first $11,925 is taxed at 10%. The income from $11,925 to $48,475 is taxed at 12%. From $48,475 to $85,000, it's taxed at 22%. So if you get a raise that pushes you into that next bracket, only the additional income above the threshold is taxed at the higher rate. Everything below stays exactly the same. You will always take home more money when you earn more. Always. Another thing people don't realize is that tax brackets aren't the same for everyone. Your tax brackets depend on your filing status. Single filers have different brackets than married couples filing jointly, heads of household, or married people filing separately. Generally, married couples filing jointly get wider brackets, which means they can earn more before hitting higher tax rates. It's one of the tax advantages of being married. So when you're looking up tax brackets, make sure you're looking at the right category for your situation. Here's something that trips people up: the difference between your tax bracket and your effective tax rate. Your tax bracket is your marginal rate. It's the percentage you pay on the last dollar you earn. But your effective tax rate is the total tax you pay, divided by your total income. Because of the progressive system, where your income is taxed in chunks at different rates, your effective rate is always lower than your top bracket. So someone in the 24% tax bracket isn't paying 24% of their income in federal taxes. They're paying something more like 15% or 18%, depending on their exact income. The 24% only applies to that top portion. A lot of people think bonuses are taxed at a higher rate. They're not, but I understand why it feels that way. When your employer pays you a bonus, they typically withhold taxes at a flat rate of 22%. So if you get a $10,000 bonus, they take out $2,200 up front, and you receive $7,800. If you're normally in the 12% tax bracket, you're thinking, why did they take out so much? Here's the key. Withholding is not the same as the actual tax you owe. It's just your employer's best guess. When you file your tax return, the IRS doesn't care whether the money came from your salary or a bonus. They just see your total income for the year. So if you made $60,000 in salary plus that $10,000 bonus, they tax all $70,000 using the normal progressive brackets. If too much was withheld from your bonus, you get it back as a refund. If too little was withheld, you'll owe a bit more. The bottom line, bonuses are taxed exactly the same as your regular salary. The withholding might look different, but the actual tax rate is the same. So that's the reality of tax brackets. They're not something to be afraid of, and understanding them correctly can actually reduce a lot of unnecessary stress. The key point to remember is this: earning more money will never result in you taking home less because of taxes. The system is designed so that you always benefit from additional income. And if you ever feel confused about your specific situation, it's worth talking to a tax professional who can walk you through the details. I'm starting a series where I break down tax laws in different areas, highlight differences, answer burning questions, and burst myths. Subscribe to follow along. Thanks for watching.